This is the Marin Rift Zone 2, and it is the middle of a 3 Rift Zone family of aluminum rift zones, and there are 2 carbon rift zones above it. This particular model is $26.99. That is a Canadian price. This is a 29er with 125 millimeters of rear travel, 130 mil travel fork, a 65.5 degree head tube angle, 76 degree seat tube angle, 425 millimeter long chain stays. That should be 425 millimeter short chain stays because that is really short for a 29er. And in a size large, the reach number is 480 millimeters. Size medium, this is the size medium we're looking at, 455 millimeter reach. So this is a progressive new school geometry price point bike with all the key features that will let you hit the trail and get an amazing experience. I would call this a do-it-all, go for a trail ride. I would even shuttle on something like this because it is such a confidence-inspiring bike. And I can speak from personal experience because one of my 2 main bikes I rode this year was the Rift Zone Carbon 2, and I absolutely raved about that bike, and I got some really fun, fast times on some of the local trails on that. So, big key features on this bike. V-tire, flow snap, 29 by 2.35, tubeless ready tires on here. The rims are tubeless ready as well, so you just need to buy some valves and some sealant and you could set these up tubeless. Shimano Dior, their brand new 12-speed drivetrain with a 10 to 51 tooth range on that 12-speed cassette there. This is a clutch setup derailleur, that's important. That spring, very strong. That helps to keep your chain from coming off in the really bumpy terrain. We also have new for this year, this really nice chainstay protection, which also has all this ribbing, which helps to dampen the noise and quiet the chain if it does start bouncing around in really bumpy terrain. Fsa Comet Crank Set with their version of a narrow wide 32 tooth chain ring. A RockShox Deluxe Select Air Rear Shock. This is a simple rear shock. It's only got rebound adjustment in addition to the air pressure that you can change for it to work for a rider's weight. But combined with this 76 degree seat tube angle, what you tend to find is the steeper your seat tube angle, the less a bike will have a tendency to bob. So this bike, while it doesn't have a rear lockout, it is a really good functioning rear shock, quite supple, decent small bump compliance, but you just don't get a rear lockout and you don't really need one. This bike is basically using the multi-track, which is a simple single pivot rear end design. That is your single pivot. We see no other pivots before we get to the rear axle. This is what they consider a linkage driven single pivot, so we do have a pivot on the seat stay here. That goes up, drives a link, drives your shock vertically. This stuff is basically all on sealed bearings. We'll just, if we can see that made for fun. That's still one of my favorite decals on a Marin because that is something they deliver on. So we have internal cable routing. We have an X-Fusion dropper post on here, a Marin saddle, room for a water bottle, I would say, judging by my carbon bikes experience, I can only fit a 600 ml bottle, but at least it's a water bottle. There's how the internal routing goes, just pretty simple rubberized plugs. Cables come down out there, or they come out of there for the rear derailleur cable. There are ISCG tabs on this, so that little thing that you're seeing there, and can we see another one here? In there. So an ISCG tab would be for if you wanted to ride this thing really aggressively and wanted a chain guide on there, you could. We have just a hint of green in this kind of sparkly green-gray color. Fades to a more silver with some interesting whatever that would be. And then just a black rear end on here. The fork on this is a RockShox Recon Air fork with compression adjustment, which basically means that you could choose to lock that fork out. I don't know who uses a lockout on a fork on a full suspension, but it's usually just a sign that we've got some decent quality. It's a through axle fork. Rebound adjustment is under there. Speaking of through axles, this is a proper through axle frame on here with boost spacing. We have Marin cockpit, so handlebars and stem. It's a 35 millimeter long stem, so nice and short. 780 millimeter wide handlebars, and the Marin bars seem to have a nice bend to them. The Shimano hydraulic disc brakes. Shimano Dior trigger system. In the case of Shimano's shifting, you can use it as a thumb finger or as a thumb. So that is kind of a nice thing for people who like Shimano shifters. That is one of the things they like. There's that air cap. Front brake and rotor on there. They're using a center lock disc brake mount on these Shimano Hubs. That is one of the cool things with the bikes that are using a Shimano 12-speed cassette. They pretty much have to use either a Shimano hub, or they have to use something really high-end like DT Swiss or Industry 9, something like that, to get the micro spline system that 12-speed cassette mounts onto. You can see the back of the cassette. Even in the case of a Dior cassette, we have what's considered a spidered cassette, so you've got some extra support for those big gears at the back there. We have external bottom bracket system on here, so that just means that the bearings are outside of the bottom bracket itself, which gives you the chance to use bigger bearings further apart for more support. This sort of classic Marin detail of having that gusset here allows us, even on a size large or extra large, to still have quite low standover height. This dropper post on here would be a 150 millimeter dropper post. Those are some of the details of the Rift Zone 2. The Rift Zone 1 is a $21.99 bike. The big thing you get on it is the fact that it doesn't have a dropper post. So we find that the Rift Zone 2 is the most popular of the models. The dropper post being a big thing that pushes people, and then just getting that little bit of an upgrade in drivetrain from the Rift Zone 1 to 2. The Rift Zone 3 is, I think, a 35-49 bike, and then you're stepping up to higher quality brakes, drivetrain, of course still a dropper post and everything then. For sizing on these bikes, I'm 6'1", I ride a large, I quite like it. However, some other people at 6'1" would maybe choose to ride an extra large. Our general recommendation on these is a large would be 5'10" to 6'1", extra large 6'1" to 6'4", medium 5'7" to 5'10", small 5'3" to 5'7", something like that. And I don't believe that they make these in an extra small, or I'm pretty sure they don't make them in an extra small. So who is this bike for? I would say there's two potential users for this. It is a great all-purpose trail bike. Its geometry suits climbing really well. Its geometry also descends very, very confidently, much better than you would expect for a 125 rear, 130 front suspension bike. I would even say that this could be treated like a short travel enduro bike because of the angles on it. It descends so confidently and so much better than its travel numbers suggest that under a skilled rider this could be a descending oriented bike. So it really does kind of perform outside of its suspension numbers. Weight on this bike, it is not a light bike, but it also rides much, much lighter than its weight. At just 35 pounds, I weighed this one. That could be lightened up a lot. Those tires are boat anchors. There are still tubes inside those tires. Even the carbon version that I ride of this bike with carbon rims on it that I upgraded and titanium cranks, it's still about a 32-pound bike. So this is a bike, the weight indicates that these guys are trying to make this an extremely durable, stiff, strong bike as opposed to making a flimsy noodle of a lightweight bike. So this is the 2021 Marin Rift Zone 2, an aluminum 29er trail bike that's capable of so much more and is so good. Thank you.